Life is a long highway and I'm just doing the best I can.
Welcome back to the Straight Line to Success, and I'm honored to have Erik Weir here. You've been successful as a finance, real estate, film, and of course other things as an entrepreneur, and thank you for being here today, Erik.
Oh, it's my pleasure entirely. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, can you, let's get that mic, there you go. So, Erik, tell us a little bit about, what you're the author of this book, Who's Eating Your Pie?
Right.
What, when you sort of got this idea in your mind to write a book, tell us about that. What prompted you to write this book?
Well, I wrote the book during COVID, and I wrote it when people were depressed, they're detached, they're isolated, and the early forecasts were that 20% of the world would die. Remember that? It was like crazy. Oh, yeah. And my first chapter is permission to dream. And most people quit dreaming. If you look at a kid, I'm going to be an astronaut, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a scientist, and that stops at some point where you begin to believe lies. You can't accomplish something, you won't be able to do this. So I start off by saying, what would you attempt to do in your life if you couldn't fail? And to get the clarity, because a kid knows what he wants to do. You may say, hey, it's unrealistic, right? But they know where they want to go, right? And somewhere in life, most of us quit dreaming. I would say is people die long before they're buried. So I think most people die in their 20s and they're not buried till their 70s or 80s. But what if you could live your entire life? And that starts with giving yourself permission to dream.
Well, and that's incredible. That's a fantastic answer. And, one of the things that I'm trying to figure out, too, is what allowed you to get to the point where, you chase your dreams. You get into action. You're not limiting your mindset. You're overcoming that fear, whatever. I mean, how did you get there? What was the background? What triggered you?
I heard somebody say, you pray for wisdom, you get problems, right? Problems to solve, right? If you pray for strength, you get struggle. And for me, it was struggle. It was difficulty. And, my fifth year of life was a hard year. I got in a car wreck, had a traumatic brain injury, and lost the ability to speak for a few days, and then had a terrible stutter that diminished, still pretty bad for 30 years. It was a difficult time. And my speech therapist told me the first day, and I'm sitting here in my mind's eye, my legs are dangling off the front of the chairs, and she goes, Erik, life's going to be hard for you. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not the kind of setup I was hoping for, right? Life's going to be hard. Every conversation is going to be difficult. Every new encounter, every new relationship. And when you stutter, you're going to want to pull back and be reclusive. And odds are you'll be a failure in life and reclusive. Or you can push through that and see every conversation as an opportunity, every struggle as something to push through. And if you have that mindset, over time, you will see every obstacle as something you can go over or around and figure out, and you'll be successful. And I was like, wow, that's a lot to take in at 5, right? So I leave the meeting, and my parents are like, well, life's going to be hard, let's figure it out. And they didn't say, that person's a quack, let's get another opinion and soft sell this thing. So that was probably the best thing, those two things. And then I did a lemonade stand, which I covered in my book. And I was 5 years old, I'm trying to sell lemonade, and I stutter. And when your name starts with an E, I'm Erik, and then Weir with a W. Those are hard for stutters to say. E's and W's are hard, and F's are forget about it. So I'm Erik Weir with 50-cent lemonade. So, it was super hard. And I had my lemonade stand, and they're like, people would pull up. I lived near a school, so it was convenient. They pull up, pick up their kids or drop them off or whatever. And I was young, so I was in a different school. And they would say, how much is lemonade? And I'd point to the sign thinking, I'm not going to speak. And they would say, how much is lemonade? And I go, it's 50 cents, right? And I never got 50 cents. I got $1, I got $5. And my first day, I made like $82.
Wow.
And that's like $600 in today's money. And I came home, my dad said, how'd you do it? I said, I made $82 today. And he goes, I don't think I made $82. And the reason for that was the speech therapist wanted to associate a reward with a difficulty. And I think in life, we try to avoid difficulty. We try to avoid struggle. But oftentimes there's a reward on the other side of it.
That's very good, Erik. So 5-year-old Erik was in a terrible wreck and caused you to basically not be able to speak.
That's right.
And then when you were able to speak, you had a stutter.
Like real bad.
And so then you went to a therapist, and she said, this thing's going to be tough for you.
Your whole life is going to be hard. That's right.
And you embraced that, and
yes,
took that changed maybe your approach to how you looked at life. I mean, I know you were fives, but you've continued to.
It changed my life entirely because it was just hard. My parents got me a dog, but back before there were therapy dogs, my little dog buddy, and but it was just hard. I went to like 13 different schools before I was in the 5th grade.
Wow.
So it was a lot of change in different states and things of that nature. And what I didn't mention also is I went through another struggle is our company vehicle was a U-Haul for a while because my parents' house got foreclosed upon, washer and dryer taken. Then we ended up losing everything and moving to, and I lived on a family member's sofa who was willing but not thrilled to have us there. And it really just creates it was still fine. I still had my family. We're still connected. I have good memories from that time. And I think people just live in so much fear of what they can lose and what happens that it holds them back. And it's just like when I started a business and you're struggling. And you're like, I've got less money than I need, or I can't pay the bills. And you look back 10 years later and you just have different problems. If you're successful, you have more things to worry about, more things to take care of. And sometimes you long for the simplicity of the simple struggle. So I think just seeking to enjoy each day for what it has to offer and knowing that this too shall pass.
That's fantastic. And really appreciate you sharing that. I read the book. I think the book is fantastic. Who's Eating Your Pie? This concept of someone's always trying to take your resources or, if you're not paying attention to it. But also got... if I recall correctly, you got some training from Chuck Norris.
That's right. Yeah, I did. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. He had a karate system called the Chuck Norris Super System, is what it was called back at the time, and it was they would combine Taekwondo, which or it was Tong Soo Do, which is the original version. But Tong Soo Do was the base, and then we would do grappling and boxing and things of that nature as a supplement. And that he was the head instructor, would come by and give tests. And I actually failed my first black belt test, which was a big setback for me because I was a zealot, and I hadn't really had a setback like that. And I understood later that I probably deserved to fail, but one of the things they wanted to see was how would I respond to failure? Would I quit? And that day, several people failed their black belt tests. 3 of us did. One of the 3 just quit. I'm out of here. This place is unreasonable. I quit. The other 2 of us stayed and became, I've done it for 40 years. So multiple black belts, many different styles. But that came from another struggle. And then how do you embrace setback? So for me at that time, then I went to practicing 4 to 6 hours a day, and then for the next 6 months, I had to wait 6 months to retest. And then Mr. Norris learned about it, well, that's what I wanted to see. So did the setback cause him to double down and further develop, or did it cause him to quit? And he wants his black belts to be ones that can overcome obstacles.
That's good. Now, how old were you when this happened?
18.
18 years old. Chuck Norris. I mean, the things you read about Chuck Norris are just, I love those, and legend. I mean, incredible that you had the ability to interact with him. And so I guess I was just talking to somebody earlier today they said, we learn so much more when we lose than when we win.
Yeah, asking for wisdom is a lot to ask for. It's like, man, I don't know, But it is, and you've heard it that success whispers and failure screams, right, or speaks more loudly, however you want to say it. But you learn so much more, and if you're able to be introspective, and then also realize your contribution to the failure, that's always helpful.
The ownership.
That's right. Because I have 5 sons, right? There's always, he hit me first. There's always more to it, right? Like, what happened first? He made a face at me, and then he hit me, right, or whatever happens. But there's always there seems to be contribution there somewhere. So how do you learn from things, and how do you move on, and how do you recognize the temporary nature of life, and yet the permanence of impact you can't have.
So, and I gather from your conversation or our conversation that do you still practice some of this?
Oh, yeah. I work out every day. I still stretch every day. I have a stretching machine, and I've worked every day for over 50 years now.
So Chuck Norris system is still working.
It's still working. I even have that crazy workout thing and then the slider that he had. Yeah. I got that machine. Yeah, I still have that and weights and things. But yeah, I work out, half hour to hour a day. Probably 20 minutes stretching out. And it helps because you do as much martial arts, you wake up stiff, right? So it's not like it's that much of a discipline. It's like, I got to move today, so I need to stretch because, it becomes any kind of sport, you end up having stiffness later.
Yeah.
So it helps. It's a pleasant reminder that you need to exercise. I would say motion's lotion, right? So
you got five boys.
Five
What's
boys.
Their names? And what's their ages?
Harrison, Matthew, Patrick, Wyatt, and George. So all the way from 25 down to 10.
Wow.
Yeah, they're tons of fun.
And now are they into the martial arts as well?
The four oldest and I took, this is another interesting person from Grandmaster Kim, who was a U.S. Olympic coach 2 times. He lived in our little town for a period of time, and now he's back in Korea, but lived in our town for a while. And during that time, he had a karate studio, and at that time, he was our instructor from white belt to black belt. And the 5 of us, mine and my 4 older sons, all took lessons 2-3 times a week for a few years and practiced, and then we all tested the same day for our black belt. So every one of them who's older than 10 is a black belt.
That's impressive. That's great. And you talked a little bit about how the early years with your family losing financial support and having to go in and live with family and that kind of thing, and then you later get into the financial world. Was that something that drove you into finance, you think?
No, it was kind of funny. I was doing another business. The family had a real estate business I was doing, and when that slowed down, I looked for other employment, and had met. I always had a fascination with stocks, and I bought some stocks already in my own account as I made money in real estate commissions. So I sold real estate and did some light development through college, and then made some money, and then bought stocks with it. And then when I decided to focus on that after college, and real estate was in a slow period at that time.
I got you. So you got initially into real estate.
That's right.
And then you got into finance.
That's right. Into stocks and bonds and investable marketable securities, and then a later time I spent a little more time on real estate again.
Well, that's fascinating. So I'd like to try to help the audience here. When you are picking something, you've picked several different areas. I want to talk to you about the film too. But right now we're talking about real estate and finance, and I guess tradable securities. What was it about, the skill sets that you had that matched up with those interests?
It's really all the same, and even though they're different, distinct sectors, everything's the same. So whether you're hiring an employee or you're buying a security or you're buying real estate, you want to see you're looking at a person's current, we'll talk about a security, pick a car company or something, or pick a technology company or AI or ChatGPT or Microsoft or what do you want to talk about. Look at their current business. And what you've got to realize is that businesses change all the time. So whatever you're doing today was great for a season, but it has a shelf life. So you need to have innovation and creativity at the top of the company, and then see if it's a sustainable business in a growth industry. And you have management that can change and adapt and to struggle and difficulty and overcome. So that's what you look for. And then earnings growth and clarity. Can they clearly say what they hope to accomplish? And if they can, then that's obviously helpful. And the same when hiring people are the same if you're looking at real estate. Can be change of use. So if you say that you have 10 acres of property and in a corner you put a gas station, that influences the value of the remaining property positively because you've changed a piece of the property. So change of use in real estate can be a way to look for. Or if you have, build something, rent it out like apartments or things of that nature, you create value.
And a lot of the things that you just said in that statement, there's a lot of wisdom that you put in that 2 sentences or 3 sentences. Where did you learn about the various businesses and real estate and these things that you just laid out?
Well, I mean, I went to school, went to two different colleges and to get degrees and real estate certificates. But most of the education is learned by listening to other people or finding mentors and being a reader. And you don't have to read. You could do Audible, but I've for many years would try to knock out a book a week, and still read a lot. So it's just have your ears open. I think I've learned everything from like an Uber driver gave me advice to a CEO. But if you're always listening, the value of someone else's perspective, you can pretty much. I find you can learn something from just about everybody, even things to do, sometimes things not to do, but you can learn something from everybody.
Yeah, so formal education and informal mentors and just people in the business that you picked up, or just Uber driver.
I mean, formal education, and there's been a lot of talk lately, the importance of formal education, the cost-benefit analysis of that, but I've probably learned more outside of formal education, but I have learned a lot inside of formal education as well. But formal education is really preparing you to learn and teaching the skills. And I tell my kids, go to the institution, but don't become institutionalized. So learn what it has to offer, learn the structure, learn that, but don't lose the creativity, because sometimes if you have a mentor who's teaching you, this is all that exists in the world, sometimes maybe there's things outside of that particular box you can use for problem solving.
Now, that's good. Now, and we've known each other, Erik, for probably 15 years, and it's been my honor to see you doing things in the community and different things. And as soon as I think I've got you figured out, you start doing something that I didn't have any idea that you were into. And one of those things was a success in the film industry with the movie War Room.
Oh, what an amazing film!
How did you get into that?
Well, that film was written and I guess directed, and the Kendricks brothers out of Georgia are just amazing filmmakers and storytellers, and they were able to tell a story that really impact people about the power of prayer and how that changes people's lives. And the funding was provided, their particular movie, by a major motion picture film company, Sony. And what's helpful for us is we would lead marketing. So we take marketing dollars at this particular time and would market the films. And the Kendricks were great, have a good reputation, and you would market your grassroots. You do advertising. They call it P&A, but print and advertising. And but we did that on that movie and a number of others, and some we would actually fund the production, and some we would provide the production and the marketing, and others we would help in any number of areas through a company I was previously affiliated with.
And obviously hit a home run with War Room.
War Room was fantastic, and making films, you have to have people. The Kendricks were fantastic to work with. They're very, very smart, capable people, and they've done Fireproof and so many other very good movies, and finding talent like that and having them to be supported it really makes a difference.
It's incredible, and I know you spent some time in Atlanta where there's a lot of these films being made. Was that somehow impacted your ability to get into the film industry, or?
What's interesting is I grew up south of Atlanta in Fayetteville, and it's now like the film hub of America. More films produced there than content than in L.A., which is interesting, due to tax incentives and things of that nature. And it's near where I grew up, right? But I left before that ever began. And then I moved to California, and I come back, and I got involved in film by going on a filmmaker invited me on a trip to tell a story about pantheism, which is multi gods, versus creationism, was one god. And it was going down the Amazon, and we went with a medical missionary, and it was kind of a father-son sort of thing, and filmmakers. And I was like, well, I'll go, but if I could bring my son with me, it'd be great. And I went, and that was 2010. And when I did that, every New Year's I set goals, and one of the goals I set was to be involved in film to make it, to help finance it, or participate in some way to cause impact. I had no idea how to do that. Why did I have this goal? And later, I guess during that trip and later, I saw the impact of film, because there are very few settings in which, particularly now, even more than then, where you can have an hour and a half of someone's time where they're not distracted by their phone or checking text or emails or what's going on television. And you can really educate people through film. And I think War Room in particular educated people the importance of taking time to pray. And there have actually been studies show people who pray live longer than those who don't. So transfer of, of concern or anguish, it's a belief that alleviates some of your temporary concern and anxiety, which prolongs life. Regardless of what you think, it has been shown to help. And so that was a good story to tell, and to show it how it positively impacted people's lives. And we've told other stories too, that have been impactful. Unbroken, The Path to Redemption, with Louis Zamperini, the World War II veteran, and Angelina Jolie told the first story, Unbroken, and we told it from him returning home through becoming a Christian at a Billy Graham crusade.
How about that?
And the first crusade he walks out of, just, I'm out of here. These people are crazy. And he had a significant alcohol issue, just dealing with all the.
What was his name again?
His name was Louis Zamperini.
Gotcha.
And he was I think it was the 1936 Olympics. And was picked to win the mile race. Just a very interesting guy. But he ended up being captured and beaten by a guy they called the Birdman, and he just beat him terribly. And he had a lot of anger and wanted to get revenge toward him. And then he goes back the second night to Billy Graham crusade. And one of the most powerful scenes in that movie, and we actually had Billy Graham's son to play Billy Graham in that, so it was great. And it was a dusty reenactment of the tent facility that he was there. And he fell to his knees, and you saw the dust come up. And it was just the weight of his own anger and bitterness. And he left it at the cross. He fell at his knees. And just the power of that scene was remarkable. And he actually got up from that and then went back to Japan to try to forgive that person and look him up. So he found all of his captors and forgave them face to face. Never was able to connect with the Birdman. He didn't want to meet him. But there was a powerful story, and his life impacted so many other people, and he dedicated his life to helping young kids overcome different issues. But that was a good story to tell, because you have so many stories of people who dedicate their life to whatever it happens to be, but maybe it's not giving back, and it's not recognizing that to forgive people who do things that are seemingly unforgivable, and yet how when he released them, it helped his life, and when he went back to tell those people, I forgave you, it broke them as he forgave people who didn't even ask for it. And over 150 churches were planted out of him going back and forgiving people. So It's just a great story. And Angelina Jolie was wonderful to work with. And the first one, she gave us, time to use and cuts, and it was just a great environment. And it was, it was a movie that we've heard from people that made impacts, and former POWs and people with PTSD have written letters to say how much it impacted their life. And I thought, man, I've never written a letter over a film or a book for that matter. I'm just like, well, that was good, But so you wonder how many people were really impacted if some number of people take time to write you and say it impacted their life.
That's incredible. It's incredible. And again, I appreciate you being in here, Erik. And, this is a success and leadership podcast. And, I'm sure that you have over the years, done your own search for success and leadership. In fact, you have your own podcast, and it's fantastic. What would you say defines success for you? How do you define that? And has it changed? How has it changed?
Yeah. Success is really different for everybody, and I think one of the greatest mistakes we can make is define success as strictly financial. And I've had the benefit of being with some very wealthy people near the end of their life, and they would not define success at that point in time as finance.
That's interesting.
They would say, and so I made a little wheel on the.
So what are we looking at there?
This is a thing I made to kind of go along with the book. That's how to massively increase your productivity through the daily action planner.
Gotcha.
And I kind of thought of a wheel of life with the 5 F's, and they could be different letters, but for me it was belief system or faith, family, fitness, finance, friends. And I used to seek to have a balanced life, and I realized there's no such thing as a balanced life.
Right.
There might be a life of harmony, right? Because there's seasons in life where you you neglect certain of these areas, you have to. You have a new child. I mean, maybe that impacts your fitness. Maybe that impacts your work, right?
Yep.
You just can't help it. You go through things like that all the time. So you rate yourself on a monthly basis. How are you in the 5 areas? And you'll notice, hey, I'm a 2 this month, and I'm a 6 in this, or a 4. Well, okay, I'm aware that I'm a 2 now, but you need to recognize that keeps repeating a 2, a 2, a 2. That area at some point will consume you. So the areas you ignore consume you in the end. But you've got to live in harmony. And then we just kind of go through ways to structure your day to be a strategic thinker, take strategy, take offense, take ground, defense, hold ground, and moonshot. What one thing, if accomplished, would change your life in a positive way today? And try to do that every day. So that is something that is helpful and helps me define success, is what's important to me in all these areas: faith, family, fitness, finance, friends. And I set those up, and they change. And I think what also really impacts people, and certainly has me as well, is we oftentimes have a very overly optimistic view of what we can accomplish over the short term, right? Like, I can lose 10 pounds this month, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe 1 is good. It doesn't have to be 10. Maybe 2, right? 10 may be a lot. I mean, I'm not saying it's not doable, but a lot of things have to go right. But if you say, hey, I'm going to make progressive change, and then the compounding effect of that, you can accomplish way more than you probably think is possible. And I illustrate that by saying, if you, the rule of 72, any number divided into 72 is how long it takes mathematically for it to compound. So if I earn 7.2% interest a year, in 10 years I've doubled my money. Okay. What if I could make 1% improvement to my life each day? Then that means in a week I've made a 7% change. Right? In 10 weeks I've doubled just by 1% change a day. And I give a simple example. If I wanted to go to a gym and I want to make progressive change, I had a friend of mine for 10 years, never went, but every New Year's it was his resolution. And I said, this year do this, just turn on your computer January 1st and stop. That's what you need to do. That's it. Next day, open Google search engine, stop. Next day, put gym near me, stop. Next day, press send. Next day, call but hang up because you're doing too much. Then you call back and you meet them. And I said, in like a week or 10 days, you're working out, which is more than you've done in 10 years. And you've done it because it becomes some massive hurdle we have to climb. Join a gym and get a trainer, when actually, if you just break it into smaller steps, we can actually accomplish almost anything.
That's good. And I love this workbook. And, I've got a million questions that I want to ask you about it, but let me just sort of say, how do you keep yourself focused and on track? I mean, I know that there's this workbook, but you just talked about things that you want to accomplish, basically breaking them down to baby steps, if you will, and, trying to, and I like that because it can get so overwhelming when you start thinking about it, and then you put all that pressure on yourself, and then you don't even start at all because you've already failed. You've talked yourself out of it. But how do you? And again, I've watched you from afar. You seem like you pop up with something that's like, man, I knew he was busy as all get out, and then he comes up with something else like Top Golf Funding International. How do you stay on track with all this? I mean, is this your tool, or
it
do you have a periodic?
I actually created this tool in response to people asking me, how do I make those steps?
Okay.
And I made the tool for that. But for me, it's thinking of coming to the realization that I'm never going to get everything done in a single day. And I'm always going to have things I intend to do that I will not get done. Okay. So I assume I can maybe get 3 things done in any day. Okay. Some days are 5, some days maybe 2, right? Yep. So it might be 10 depending on what they are. So I'm like, if I can only get 2 or 3 things done a day, what really is going to move the needle for me to do? And I make sure I do those things. And I prioritize those on my list. I've got those here as important and urgent. Those get done. Important, not urgent, are next. Not urgent but not important is following that, and not urgent, not important. Maybe wash my car. It could be that. However, if I'm a real estate agent and I'm showing some houses in an hour and a half, that my not important, not an urgent of last week now is important and urgent. I need to wash the car before I show the person around. So you'll find things move around, and I have a capture section where I write down all the things I want to accomplish, and then I prioritize them based on importance and urgency.
This is great. So you basically created a tool to help you focus and stay connected, and you're sharing that with others as well.
Right. And then I realized there's not a lot of room because it's hard to do more than a few things well, right? And you just stay on point. You don't deviate to not important, not urgent, when you still have important, urgent things that are yet unattended to.
Well, let me take you to, Who's Eating Your Pie. We talked a little bit about the setup and what got you into the book. Talk about just the book in general. How did you organize it? How is it organized? And what are the benefits?
So the first third of the book is really giving yourself permission to dream, and then taking a realistic look of where you are. And one of my chapters is the pit of sabotage. What lies do you believe about yourself that are holding you back? We all have them, and they pop up in different periods of time. So the first third is really, where are you now? What threatens you? What are you afraid of? What bad expectations do you have? Yep. And then we go into like bridging the gaps. Where are we today? Where do we want to go? And what can we do to bridge that gap? Maybe it's mentorship, maybe it's more discipline, maybe it's more folk, whatever it happens to be, right?
How do you level up?
How do you level up? Yeah, and then take ground. And the last third is knowing what you learn, and these are my goals, and how do I take my goals, take where I am, and being realistic, and then create a plan for the future that may include relational. Being on solid ground financially, whatever it happens to be that's important to you in the 5 F's. How do I get there? What would that look like?
Yeah, so this book right here will really help lead us through the process of figuring out your challenges. And I think that that self-sabotage, is that something that you've experienced?
Oh yeah, I can't tell you when you stutter, and it's terrible because you go out, you meet somebody, you're anxious. Your first date is a nightmare. It's terrible, right? And asking people out. I would call when I was cold. You sound like you're a heavy breather. You're like, we're at a brokerage firm, and I'm like, my name is Erik Weir with Merrill Lynch. I'm trying to earn an investment business. That was my line, and I'd be like, hi, and it sound like I'm like. Or something like that, or a stutter, and it's just hard, and it beats you up, because you do it 30 times a day, and then over time you just have to embrace yourself. And what caused me ultimately to get over that was a church service where a guy goes talking about Paul with a thorn in his flesh. We don't know what it was, but he couldn't get prayed a couple times for God to relieve it from him, and he never did. It's like, wow, that's Paul, right?
Yeah.
But he said, be grateful for what besets you. And I'm like, I don't want to do that because it's my stutter, and I'm mad at God about that. I don't want to be grateful for my stutter. And then I said, well, be grateful for it. So I said, well, thank you, Lord, for the stutter that so shaped my life and gave me probably additional tenacity and resolve that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And then the stutter slowly over 2 or 3 years went away. It wasn't like instantaneous, but because I accepted it as part of me and didn't try to reject it and fight it every day, it just settled down.
So what you thought was a curse ended up being a blessing, but it wasn't until you recognized it as such.
It wasn't until I recognized it. And that's the whole thing. It's like when you're going through struggles, and I have to remind myself today, so you don't want to say that, hey, I got this dialed in 100% of the time, because I have struggles, and you feel sorry for yourself, and all that still are things you deal with, right? But just realize that oftentimes if you look back, the growth opportunities you've had and the pivots in your life oftentimes come from the struggles you faced along the way.
It's great, Erik. And again, I would love to get you back on the show, but before I let you go today, I would like for you to tell our listeners, how can they find out more about you? How can they get your book and this workbook? Is it available?
It is, yeah. So if you do, I have them now. Just go to erikweir.com and shoot me an email, and I'll send one out to you. If you're looking for the book, the same way, or go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and you can acquire the book there as well.
And if they're interested in having you, they can connect with you to speak and all that kind of stuff.
If you want me to speak or coaching, I do that as well. And it's the same thing, erikweir.com, or just shoot me an email and I'll get back with you.
And that's financial coaching, right?
No, we do finance, and it just depends. Business things, just if you feel like I can help you, or you're looking for the faith, family, fitness, finance, friends, or how to structure days, I do a lot of that. and then there are people that I can refer people to depending on what they're looking for.
Yeah, you got an incredible network, Erik, and I really appreciate your time today. And
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
Doing the best they can.
Thank you for listening to The Straight Line to Success. Copyright 2026 Wyatt Sports and Entertainment, LLC. All rights reserved. Visit www.tslts.com and join the TSLTS Insider for exclusive content and updates.
Highway and we roll. We're doing the best we can. Everybody do your best. Come on, come on. Do your best. Do your best. The best you can.